So you got a Jeep like me and you like to do some off-roading. We need to get underneath it and talk about the differentials. Hey friends, it's Len here from 1A Auto. So if you got a Jeep like me, you know you like to do a little bit of off-roading with it. One thing about off-roading though is that the trails aren't necessarily maintained the same way as regular roads. There's going to be a lot of sticks, rocks, mud, and water. All the fun stuff, really. So now let's have a look at our rear differential. It looks a little bit different than the front, but it's approximately the same. You're going to of course have your suspension, you're going to have shocks, and of course the coil springs. You want to make sure that everything's in good working order and it's not damaged in any way. If you see any cracks or if you see any fluid coming out of your shocks, it's definitely something that you're going to want to service or even replace. Other things that you're going to want to definitely pay attention to would be your brake lines. You're going to have hoses that look like this, and of course if there's sticks or anything else, it might potentially get caught. If you happen to see that anything's bent or torn or cracked in any way, once again, it's something that needs to be serviced. And since we're looking in this general area, let's talk about the ABS sensor. You're going to have your ABS sensor with, of course, a wire that comes along here. You want to make sure that that's not broken and damaged, and of course, it's definitely plugged in. If moisture makes its way inside there, it could potentially corrode and, of course, cause ABS issues. Other than that, if you were to look at your backing plate and you happen to see that it looked like it was moist around the lower area or even dripping down here, that would essentially mean that you have a differential tube leak. So essentially, if you were to take apart the brakes and look behind there where the axle goes into the tube, there should be a seal. If that's leaking, you're going to see it coming out down along there. Now also located around the plate, you're going to happen to see that you have your EBrake mechanism. This is going to be the area where the cable connects into and then goes to your EBrake shoes. It's going to be super important to make sure that you don't have any dirt or debris caught up inside there. If it does, you could potentially seize up your pivot point, and then of course you're going to have an issue with your EBrake. So of course make sure that this is in good condition and it seems as though everything's flowing the way it should. You also want to move along to the input side of your differential. There should be a seal located right inside this area. If you happen to see that there's gear oil running down the differential, it's more than likely due to a seal issue right there. And since we're talking about seal leaks, of course you have your pan gasket. You want to make sure that you don't have any fluid located all down along here. If you do, typically it's because the RTV or gasket that's along here is coming apart and deteriorated. Now let's talk about the super important breather hose. This is going to be something that people don't generally think about, but if you're doing a lot of off-roading, it's going to be super important. Essentially the reason why it goes up so high is to help keep moisture and debris from making its way into the differential. Essentially, it's just supposed to be a breather, and you want to make sure that nothing makes its way back into the differential tube. Now, with all that said, if you happen to have any seal leaks or even that differential tube was hanging low and you like to do a little bit of off-roading, there's a possibility that contaminants could make their way into the differential. Of course, that would be very bad, and of course, it would lead to costly repairs. Okay, so now if you did happen to do some off-roading and maybe you hit a little mud or even went into the water and you were worried about the possibility that there was contaminants inside of your differential, you could of course pull this fill plug right here and then try to get a little sample of the fluid that's in there. If it looks as though it's contaminated or milky or creamy in any way, then it's something that you're definitely going to want to service. Now, to service your differential, you could essentially do it two different ways. If you were doing it strictly for maintenance, you could go ahead and pull the fill plug and then pull your drain plug and let it completely run out. After that, of course, you would put in your drain plug, fill it back up with the proper fluid, and you should be good to go. If for some reason you were doing it because maybe, like I said, you did a little bit off-roading, you had a little bit too much fun, and you got a little bit wet, or maybe you were just concerned that there was possible contaminants inside the system, it makes sense to me to go ahead and drain the fluid first, and then of course I'm going to remove the whole pan by removing these bolts, and we're going to check the gears inside. When you remove the drain plug, you're going to see that it has a magnet on it. It's going to be very common for it to have small particles of metal on it, but if you happen to see any large shards, that's telling you that you have an issue with your differential. So now the next thing you want to do obviously is to clean this down. Get any particles off of there and of course clean off the threads. Let's just go ahead and clean off the area, and then we're going to put our drain plug, once it's cleaned with some thread sealer on there, we'll go ahead and put this back in and snug it up. So now we're just going to go ahead and add fluid to this. You want to make sure that you use your manufacturer specified fluid. If you happen to have limited slip differential, you need to make sure that you add the additive. All right, now when we fill this, we want to fill it just so it's just coming out of that fill plug hole. Go ahead and clean up your mess and then install your fill plug. Feel like it bottomed out, teeny bit more, perfect. Okay friends, so that's pretty much what I've got for you for inspecting and servicing your differentials on your Jeep. Now obviously if you're just driving it on the road for commuting service, then you could just get inside your owner's manual and that's going to let you know your specific service interval. But if you like to do a little bit of off-roading, or maybe you get muddy or even inside some water, you're probably going to want to get under here a little bit more often, and you're probably going to want to service your differentials more often as well. I hope you liked the video, and I hope you learned a little something along the way. If you did, or you got something to say, leave it in the comments section below, because I always love to hear from you. If you like the video, smash on the like button for me, it would mean the world. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe and ring the bell. That way there you can be kept up with all of our latest content. Thanks.